Hey everybody, it's Aiden here once again, and welcome back to the channel, as it's time to put on the smooth jazz, add a smoky haze to the room, and review the technical regulations of chat in my opinions and analysis series, Pressing Issues. Now, unlike my Storytime series, which is told exactly as it happened, Pressing Issues is brained to Microsoft Word script to mouth with no filtering mechanism whatsoever. And remember kids, if your opinion isn't coming out of my mouth, it doesn't mean I'm wrong. It also means that you are not wrong. It's an opinion. Welcome to 2019. Anyway, today's Pressing Issues is part inspired by discussion on a couple of Discord servers and Facebook groups I'm on, including my own. And that is the 2021 regulations for Formula 1 and whether or not these new regulations will, in inverted commas, save the sport from death. A common phrase that gets thrown around. Now don't get me wrong here, I'm not going to sit here and pretend everything is fine in Formula 1 and there is nothing wrong whatsoever. Costs are escalating. You've got a team at the top that despite rule changes is still winning, too many rule changes too quickly, and they are making the gap between rich and poor too big, and the pay TV deals are driving fans away. Amongst other things, but those are the ones that immediately spring to mind. Now, Liberty Media and the FIA are currently in talks surrounding a new car concept to try and deliver better racing, and are supposedly, according to some websites, so far removed from the current regulations that are in use today. So what I thought I'd do is give some opinions on some of the things that have been proposed, and react to things that have been said by media personalities and others on the internet recently. So here we go! The first thing that has been pretty much confirmed is a return to ground effect, something that was banned in the early 1980s, and something that if you want to learn more about, gets explained in the Storytime episode I did about a month ago. Ground effect was initially used by Lotus as a way of producing insane amounts of downforce under the car instead of using the topside aerodynamics we see today, and rapid progress meant that the cars got too quick for the safety standards of the time. And after a few deaths and catastrophic injuries, the FIA ordered flat-bottom cars in 1983. Andy Green, technical director at Racing Point, has said that the 2021 changes for ground effect coming in will be so significant that F1 needs to keep this year's rules for the next year as well, so teams can carry over parts and then prepare them for what he calls the tsunami of work that will land on them for 2021. And if they want the cars to follow closer, then ground effect is the answer. But at the same time, I'm a little bit skeptical over the whole manufactured entertainment thing. Okay, I get it, we need to bring in younger fans, otherwise once us older fans are all long dead, there will be no one to replace us. But at the same time, stop manufacturing entertainment. Let it happen naturally, like we saw at Austria and Silverstone recently. You cannot manufacture entertainment at the expense of sport. Sport should breed entertainment. The more the FIA screws with the rulebook, the more the sport looks like a bunch of wankers. However, at the same time, less research and development is put into super complicated front wings and super complicated aero, so in theory, costs come down. I mean, a Venturi tunnel is a Venturi tunnel. It has to obey the laws of physics, otherwise it doesn't really work, does it? Now, please correct me if I'm wrong, my degree involved audio engineering, not aerodynamic engineering. Maybe it could entice someone like Penske to have a crack at Formula 1. Again, he's used to dealing with ground effect because that's what IndyCars are using these days, and the cost cutting might mean that if he fails, he's not lost a lot of money in the grand scheme of things, and it might mean American talent coming through and popularising Formula 1 in America. Or maybe I'm getting too far ahead of myself. Then, on top of these ground effect proposals, the FIA has created a group specifically set up to scope out any loopholes left in the rulebook. And what's the point in that? The double diffuser, the second brake pedal, frick, the blown diffuser, all loopholes that were exploited and exploited well. It gave another team an advantage because they thought outside of the box. But can't have that because someone somewhere complained and it's banned immediately. And that's what makes Formula 1 interesting. It's not just the on-track stuff, but the little things that make you go, oh my god, how did they do that? If it's not a flat-out attempt at deceiving the officials, let them do it. The double diffuser was a brilliant idea. Without it, we wouldn't have had the fairy tale, if a bit fluky, Brawn Championship otherwise. The second brake pedal on the McLarens involved Hakkinen and Coulthard learning a whole new style of driving. The blown diffuser was classic Adrian Newey, and the reason we love him. Because a bit of innovation and thinking outside the box means that the little team that's come up with some cheap hack can have his day. Again, Brawn. Want to be as good as the team that's beating you? Get your own blown diffuser. Get your own F-duct. Now I know what some of you have been thinking. Let them run what they want. No. Open formula does not work. See Group C. Porsche turned up, spent a fuck ton of money, and the FIA and ACO had to get rid of the stuff that made that series interesting to get Porsche to leave. Then people complained it wasn't good anymore. Thanks, Porsche. Now, speaking of complaining, that was something that came up in Jeremy Clarkson's rant the other day. Now, I love Jeremy Clarkson. He's entertaining, he says what he thinks, and you can probably hear some of his influences in some of my videos. But the only thing I agreed with him in that video was that F1 needs a dictator. It needs someone to go, right, Toto, Claire, Gunther, Christian, here's your rulebook, go and build a car. But we do not like this rule, we do not like that rule or this rule. Alright then, you've got two choices. Make do, or fuck off. I don't care if you're Ferrari and have been in since the second race. I don't care if you're Mercedes and have the face of Formula 1 driving your car. That's your rulebook. Make do, or leave. Your choice. As soon as you start letting teams have too much of an input in the makings of the rules, it becomes a political clusterfuck and not sport anymore. And that's not a dig at Ferrari just because of the veto, it's a dig at Williams, McLaren, Red Bull and even Mercedes. It just becomes self-serving to protect interests. When financial fair play was enacted in football, you didn't see Real Madrid, Manchester United, Manchester City, Paris Saint-Germain complaining that this harmed their ability to just buy all the best players at heavily inflated prices. They just took it on the chin. That's not a good analogy, is it? But then the rest of Clarkson's video just degraded into, it's not 1975 anymore and I don't like it. Stuff changes. Next up concerns the use of spec parts on the car. Cars already use the same tyres and all use the same engine control unit, which is supplied by McLaren, to stop teams hiding their own option 13s in the belly of the car. The thing is, at least in my own opinion remember, that spec parts in Formula 1 would only work for the internals. Brakes, calipers, drive shafts, steering columns, axles and so on. But as soon as you mandate, say, a spec front wing, then it's not Formula 1 anymore. You could argue that a spec drive shaft isn't F1 anymore, but there just isn't the money to do it, especially for the back of the grid teams. Spec parts in turn can attract new teams to the sport, knowing that they don't have to put resources aside for something like a rear crash structure, or the latest and greatest brake pads for instance. They can put the money into making the car go fast instead, and makes things competitive. Because isn't that what we want? But then, if I was an aerodynamicist for a Formula 1 team, I would make my car as dirty as possible. Because no need to race the guy when I can just screw him up with my own dirty air. But now on to a couple of things that aren't in the proposed regulations, but I thought I'd bring up anyway because they're in the motorsport news as such. Jean Todt wants to bring back refuelling, and from what I've seen on an internet, it's divided people. Some are well in favour because it will allow drivers to push flat out, provided that the tyres can do the same obviously, instead of just tootling around doing nothing. But I'm actually against refuelling. For these reasons. So Verstappen puts a low fuel load in. Leclerc is fueled slightly higher. Leclerc's car is going to be heavier than Max's, which means a performance deficit to the lighter car. Leclerc and Ferrari know there's no point in racing the Red Bull because he'll be ever so slightly quicker. So they'll just wait for Max to pit, which will be earlier, then they'll turn the Ferrari up into party mode for however many laps in the hope of getting the overcut. The racing is then taken off track, because there's no point in racing a much faster car when you can just get him on strategy instead. And people will just go back to pissing and moaning that the wheel-to-wheel action they thought they'd get with refuelling isn't happening. But then, we had refuelling in the 2000s and those were the best years ever, weren't they? I mean, I've already covered this if you're interested. It's probably why people want it back. It's not a good idea. Trust me on this one. My hope here is with these regulations that the FIA gets something stable and something that can carry on for years to come. Decades, even with subtle changes. I'm not talking about how it will save Formula 1 and make it instantly better than it is now overnight. it might take a little bit of time. Now, I've talked about this before in a podcast with my fellow sim racing content creators FerrariMan601 and SimRacing604. Between 1995 and 2009, the rules changed very subtly. Alright, we went from 10s to 8s in 2006, but the cars didn't change much. In 1996, they banned aero deflectors in front of the rear wheels and introduced the high cockpit sides. The cars remained largely unchanged until the end of 1997, when the narrow track and groove tyres came in. Besides that, the Williams of 1997 and 1998 are rather similar, for instance, from the side profile view. Even the McLarens, the Benettons and the Jordans of the world. I'll overlay an image or two for you so you can see for yourself. Now it's, right, another year, okay then, right. Can't do that, can't do that, can't do that, that's banned, I don't even know what that is, but that's banned. Now add to this, F1 is now bloody expensive. In 2014 we had the rules change for the new hybrids. Between 1995 and 2009 we had very subtle ones with the cars evolving as time went on, and innovations in aero and materials advanced the cars. In that time frame, Benetton, Williams, Ferrari, Renault and McLaren won titles. Okay, yes, Ferrari went on their early 2000s rampage, but because the rulebook was stable, teams could catch up because of the laws of diminishing returns. Mercedes had their OP cars in 2014, 15 and 16, then after just 3 years, we had the cars look like they do now. By doing that, Mercedes also gets a reset button, not just everybody else. And look what's happened. Mercedes, with their massive resources, have spent their way around the problems, and the gap between the top 3 and the rest of the grid has got even bigger. I get it. Change the rules to stop Mercedes. But in this mega expensive world of motorsport today, by changing the rules as quickly as the FIA is doing, Red Bull, Ferrari and Mercedes will just spend their way out of the issue because they can. Haas and Williams can't. Jordan, Arrows, Minardi and teams like that would have all gone by now if they hadn't already. If Samuel was still a privateer, they would probably be in Williams' position right now. It doesn't work that easily just changing the rules. Speaking of the new rules, they're set to be announced in October. That's not too far away, and knowing the FIA, they're going to fuck it up. Some want the announcement deferred until December at the earliest to stop the top teams getting a head start on development. With NASCAR, WEC and V8 Supercars also looking to 2021 for major rule changes to the sports, we're in for an interesting time. Don't fuck it up! So this has been my thoughts on the future of Formula 1. Our usual YouTube stuff, if you liked, like, subscribe, bell on, all that good stuff. And if you want to take the conversation further, leave your thoughts in the comments, because that's what Pressing Issues is for, or join the discussion over on Discord. As always, massive thanks to my patrons on Patreon, and if you think my work is deserving of it, you can join them by clicking the link in the end card, or with my other social media stuff in the description. All that's left to say is thank you very much for watching. I've been Aidan Millward, have a great day wherever you are, and goodbye.